We've reached the end of an era as Daniel Craig's last James Bond movie, No Time to Die, just came out in theaters, so I'm going to rank all 5 Daniel Craig James Bond movies from my least favorite to my favorite. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be ranking all of the Craig-era Bond films. I just finished rewatching them, and I saw No Time to Die 2 days ago in theaters, so I'm very excited to talk about these movies, but before I do that, definitely hit the like button, comment your ranking of the Daniel Craig Bond movies down below, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos, rankings, reviews, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get right into this thing. Coming in at number 5, or the bottom, is going to be Quantum of Solace. Now, this movie came out during a writer's strike, so there was really massive issues with the script, and I've seen behind the scenes and read articles about Daniel Craig and the director trying to work through certain scenes and making ad-libs to the script because it just wasn't really fully complete. There's definitely potential and elements that could have worked. This movie is all over the place, and it kind of just throws you in the mix right from the start. The opening action sequence is very fast-paced editing, and that was the theme throughout the entirety of this movie, as it is almost nauseatingly fast when it comes to the camera work and how fast it's all edited together. Half the time you can't even tell what the hell's going on, who's holding what weapon. You can't tell certain characters from other characters in action sequences like hand-to-hand combat or shootouts. That's an issue. This movie's just really sloppy. It's only an hour 46 minutes, which is actually too short for a James Bond movie in my opinion, and the story is very surface level. It can get really bogged down as well because you don't know what's going on. Like, there are so many characters introduced, and James Bond is at the heart and center of this. So coming off Casino Royale, his character is definitely taking a step back. He's definitely supposed to be a lot darker, it just doesn't execute that as well. This is the least memorable of the Craig movies by far in my opinion, and one that I rarely revisit. Next up for me is going to be Spectre. Now, this movie I liked a lot, especially when I saw it in theaters, but over time it's definitely regressed for me. I think the standout sequence of this movie is the opening on Dia de los Muertos, when we see James Bond and this extravagant opening action sequences with helicopters, and it's basically like this one-take action sequence, and it's really well shot and well done, and it immersed me into the movie. But then we get into the actual plot involving the Spectre organization. Honestly, it just loses me. I start to doze off because it dives into what Spectre is, but it never fully goes for it or commits. And so we're just kind of pondering what Spectre is for the entirety of this movie, and it feels like we're stuck in like limbo, like in Inception, where we just don't know what the deal is with Spectre for the whole movie, and the characters don't know what's going on. So by the time we finally find out what's going on at the end and we get the scene with Christoph Waltz, it makes sense then, but the entirety of this movie, the 2-hour and 28-minute runtime of the movie, is meandering, and we're trying to figure out, oh, what's going on with Spectre, and there's a lack of action sequences, and we're getting introduced to characters left and right, figuring out new things about older characters from the past movies, such as villains. It just is a lot to soak in, and it really just becomes dull. Like, I do like where the movie begins and ends, but the entirety of this movie is a drag to get through it. Plus, we should have seen more Christoph Waltz. The guy's a 2-time Academy Award winner who played Hans Landa. Give him more screen time as a Bond villain. I feel like they were holding him back. This definitely has an impact on No Time to Die, but Spectre is a weak link in his filmography for sure. Next up for me is going to be No Time to Die, the newly released James Bond movie, aka Bond 25. I really like this movie. This is a massive step up from Quantum of Solace and Spectre in my opinion. It is really solid. Check out my review. It will be linked up above, where I do not have any spoilers, so don't worry about getting spoiled in this video either. But that is my in-depth thoughts on No Time to Die. But I will say this. I think this movie has absolutely riveting action sequences. It doesn't have as many action sequences as the other Bond movies, but that's on purpose because we're supposed to get to know these characters. It's much more of an emotional character piece as opposed to the other Bond movies, which are more action reliant. I do enjoy this movie quite a bit. I think that the 2-hour 40-minute runtime is just absurdly long though. There's really no need to drag it out that much because similarly to Spectre, this movie has a great opening and a banger of an ending, but the entire middle portion of the movie can become bogged down and almost forgettable in a sense, as there's so much going on with just a ton of boring, drawn-out expositional scenes. There could have been more action to offset that and help out with the pacing in this movie. In fact, Rami Malek is pretty weak in this movie, as he's barely in the movie. He has a Killmonger role, as he shows up at the beginning and then he's gone for like an hour. So while the villain is very quirky and weird and honestly unsettling, I think Rami Malek does the best he can with what he's given, but he's not that great at the end of the day, not a very memorable villain. But overall, No Time to Die is a very satisfying final movie for Craig's Bond run. I think there's standout moments. It's a lot better than Quantum and Spectre, and I think that it deserves to be seen on the biggest screen possible because it is a perfect send-off essentially for James Bond, and I do like the movie despite some gripes that I have. I think it's a very solid movie. So my runner-up is going to be Casino Royale, the one that kick-started it all for Daniel Craig's run as James Bond. This movie on rewatch holds up tremendously. It is such a fast-paced, thrilling movie as we get to see that opening parkour action sequence that takes like 15 minutes to play out, but it introduces Bond so perfectly as we see that he's got the physicality, but also he's got a lot of quippy one-liners during that sequence sequence as well, so it sets his character up perfectly. The poker sequence is like the main draw of this movie, and that is perfection. I think that Lashif, played by Mads Mikkelsen, is just a great villain who has such a Bond presence when it comes to the way he looks with his eye and the bloody tear. He just embodies what a Bond villain should be, but the actual way the poker sequence is shot is truly tension building, because it will go to the table and then it'll cut for a break and then a little conflict will arise, and that happens a few times. I was on the edge of my seat for like 30 minutes as the entire scene played out, and then when we get to the final act, there's some twists and turns that really keep you on your toes and they don't see fully coming, and by the time the actual final line of the movie is said, I had chills up and down my spine. I was hyped and ready to go right into the next Bond movie, and then I realized, hey, it's Quantum of Solace, so maybe I'll wait a while. But this was a perfect introduction for Daniel Craig as James Bond. Bond's relationship with Vesper Lynd, that's probably the best Bond romance I've ever seen. I feel like it's a modern classic and one that in years from now we will look back and say, that could very well be his best effort as James Bond. But coming in at number 1 for me, my personal favorite James Bond movie and my personal favorite of the Daniel Craig run has to be Skyfall. I remember seeing this movie in theaters in middle school, so nostalgia is a real thing. But on top of that, I remember Adele's song Skyfall being on the radio all the time, and it was one that I constantly listened to on my iPod. It's a beautiful song, and I think it is the best Bond song. But when it comes to the movie itself, I love a good comeback story, and that's exactly what this is. As Bond is down and out at the opening of this movie, but we see him have to crawl back out of that hole and get back to being that 007 stature. Javier Bardem plays a brilliant villain in Silva, who I think is not only menacing, but truly terrifying. Like, he is so scary. The scene where he takes out his jaw always disturbed me ever since the first time I saw this movie, and I think that his motives are very present. The scene where he literally gets out of the elevator and the camera's just still and he's just walking slowly towards the camera builds so much tension. The relationship between Bond and M is the best we ever see in the Craig run here. There's just a lot of emotional moments that are gut punches in this, but also the action is spectacular. From the opening chase scene to the final act at the house where they're basically playing Home Alone, I love everything about this movie. It's a little different from the other Bond movies, as that final act kind of takes a step away from the grandiose action sequences, and it's very much one location out in the middle of nowhere, and I love that for the better. This movie's emotional, it's got a lot of heart, but it also has fantastic action, and it is my favorite James Bond movie and easily my favorite of the Craig era. But that's going to do it for my ranking of the Daniel Craig Bond films. Definitely hit that like button. Again, comment down below your ranking. I would love to have a conversation about Bond in the comments, and I'm curious to hear your guys' rankings, especially to see where No Time to Die places, because I don't really know what the consensus on that movie is yet, so I want to know where you guys put No Time to Die. Stay tuned for more content coming very soon. I have some horror content around the corner, maybe pertaining to Scream, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.